Good morning, afternoon, or evening, everyone. My name is Elivaras, a senior player moderator for League of Angels Fire Raiders. This video is part 2 of a potentially 3 or 4 part series on building your team, starting from the ground up. Last time, we looked at emblems and free-to-play versus pay-to-play priority, and which heroes to rule out. Which heroes should you not use when you're making your team. This time, we take a look at what every single good team needs, and we also take a look at how to build a female team. Don't worry, male teams will come after in the next video, and angels will come after, but if I make too many things, then it just if I try and say too many things, it just drags on for decades. And that's obviously not what we want, because it would be a pain in the butt to edit. So I'd like to start off just quickly by apologizing. I've been trying to get a video out every 3 to 4 days, and then you're saying, well then why wasn't a video out? And that's an excellent question, and my answer to you is that I filmed about a half-hour video and started editing it. I took about like 15 minutes to plan it. I filmed for half an hour, and I started editing another 15 or so, 15, 20. And then I realized that about halfway through the video, the audio had decided to go from about 100% to about 5% and become extremely muffled, and no matter how I tried to edit it, you could hardly hear it. And so basically all my work was ruined, and I had to restart. And because it's extremely busy time right now with exams starting to come up soon, I don't have much time to film, and therefore I had not been able to film before this, so I could not get a video out. So I apologize for that. I hope my mic doesn't... excuse me. I hope my mic doesn't spontaneously stop working again. So, well, I hope that doesn't happen in this video. But if it does happen, then you guys won't know, because this video won't be going up. So, anyways, let's get into it. Building your team. First thing, what a good team needs. The first thing a good team needs is control. Whether that's shutting down that frontline panda, locking up the backline Draconia, or preventing a hero from using a key ultimate. Control is a huge part of every team. Control is what's going to keep your team from getting destroyed by their team due to their strong backline hitters. Next up, damage. This is obvious, I don't need to really go over this. Unless you're hoping to get a ton of defensive wins, you're going to need some good damage on your team. Next, sustain. I'm not talking a lot of sustain. I'm not saying, yeah, let's get the whole team shields and heals for the win. No, what I'm saying is some shields and some heals just for the purpose of keeping your backline alive. However, I will say that you should not be devoting a backline hero just to using a shield or a heal, like a full healer or a full shielder, just because you're losing a lot of potential DPS by sacrificing that backline slot. I already did this. And next, what I'd like to say is you also need, okay, well this is pretty obvious, you need a tank. You need someone who's going to soak up damage. So, preferably you want a tank and an off tank. So, what's the difference then? A tank is the hero who is going to soak up about 2 lines of damage. And because there's only 3 lines, that means that your second frontline hero only needs to be able to soak up about 1 line of damage. That's why you use an off tank instead of a full tank. You don't need to use a full tank for the line that's only going to be soaking up one line of damage. It's not necessary. You don't need that tank there when you, okay, sorry, I kind of phrased that bad. When you got a tank and an off tank, and there's 3 lines, one of those tanks is, the tank should be covering 2 lines, and the off tank's going to be covering 1 line. The off tank doesn't need to be as tanky as the tank because they're only covering 1 line. Therefore, you can sacrifice some of the tankiness for extra support on your team. So this is where I'd also like to go into something. Let's take a look at Light Envoy versus Valkyrie. What I'm talking about here is support versus a brick wall tank. So, a supportive tank versus a tank that acts only as a brick wall. So, supportive tank is someone that can tank damage and survive in the front line, while at the same time being able to support the team in more than just being a brick wall for the enemies to break down. When I'm talking team support, I'm talking heals, I'm talking shields, I'm talking rage buffs, attack buffs, defense buffs, whatever. Light Envoy is a great example of this because her ultimate allows her to give a rage buff, which is huge because it means your team can get their ultimates off first. It gives an attack buff, it gives an agility buff. An extremely powerful rage spell. On the other hand, look at someone like Valkyrie, where their rage, their ultimate is next to 0 damage, lowering the defense of the enemy front line, and they're just a brick wall, meaning they don't support their team. The problem with Valkyrie is that, yes, it takes them ages to break through her, but they don't need to break through her. They can just hit the back line anyway and kill them, and it doesn't matter that you got a Valkyrie standing there, because then she's going to be the last one alive, and she can't do damage for anything. So you want someone who could support the team so that your team doesn't get killed without the support. So you want a tank with some support. So you want a main tank like Light Envoy, who's extremely tanky and can support, but then you want your off tank who can support as well. And your off tank, you can afford to be more supportive on your off tank just because your off tank doesn't need to be as tanky since they're only taking up 1 line of damage. So, out of the 4 things, control, damage, sustain, and tankiness, you want heroes that do multiple of these things. I've already touched on this with Light Envoy being a support and a tank, but when this comes to DPS, you want a DPS that has control and damage. If they've got just tons of damage, like if you've got Draconia or Shadowstalker, okay, you don't need some control because their damage is huge anyway. But when you've got like just a normal hero, not a super OP hero, you want one that isn't just like, yay, just damage. You want some damage and some control, so they're able to help your team some more through the control. Apologies, my nose is like a little mucky right now. Alright, so you want heroes that can do multiple of these things. So now let's get into which heroes you should be using on a female team. We're going to split this up into 3 categories: tanks, DPS, and support. So let's start off with tanks. I would like to start with Light Envoy. So I've already mentioned Light Envoy. She's extremely good. Her runes are very defensive, meaning she's very tanky. Her second ability, which allows her, or no, it's her third ability, which gives her, I think at max level, or almost max level, about 30% increase to all defensive stats, which is huge. And her ultimate allows her to give rage, agility, and attack to her team. And she has another ability which puts chaos in an enemy unit for a turn. So she's got team support, she's got control, and she can go on the front line as a tank. She's an extremely good unit, and if you're going to use a female team, 100% use her. She's also getting her awakening in the next update. Going to be even better. So if you're running a female team, use Light Envoy. That's all I can say. So Light Envoy, and so there's Light Envoy, and there's 2 other heroes which I like to say are the top 3 right now. I can't really say the same for pay-to-play since I don't have a lot of the pay-to-play heroes. But Light Envoy, Astral Child, and Lumia, I would say, are the top 3 frontliners for free-to-play and low-spending users. They are the dominant trio at the top. So I already talked about Light Envoy. Astral Child is extremely good because of her shield. And her shield, while early game it doesn't seem to do much and her shield seems kind of useless, Astral Child's shield is actually very powerful. As it gets later on, the damage starts to get higher and higher, and you do quite a lot of damage to the enemy backline. When their Knight Sentinel breaks one of those shields, he takes a lot of damage. Like, this could be like half health. This could be this could be around like 50% of his health gone just from breaking that shield. And for whatever reason, the shield seems to scale with other shields. So if you have like a Guardian or a Lumia who puts a shield on top of a hero that already has an Astral Child shield, the shield will do even more damage when broken. So that makes her even more useful. The shield is obviously nice because it prevents your lowest health targets from taking more damage for a specific amount of damage, like for like 30k or so. which is a decent amount. It's not too bad. Actually, well, I guess it can be way higher than that. My numbers are completely off. Still listen to the numbers. But it can prevent them from taking quite a bit of damage. It does a lot of damage to the enemy in return. And she's got an ability which hits all 3 backline targets and lowers their attack, which is obviously useful. So, and through her runes, Astro Child has the ability to stay in the front line and work as an off tank, especially if you use crests like warding crests to give her even more tankiness. She is an excellent off tank in the front line. Next is Lumia. Lumia is extremely good because she's got a very supportive kit. First of all, she is tanky through her runes, and I think her skill gives her like extra defense and hit points, something like that, her last skill. So she's quite tanky to start off with, especially if you use crests on her, which makes her even more tanky. By the way, the same can be said for Light Envoy. If you use Warden Crest, she becomes way more tanky as well. Back to Lumia. She's got an extremely powerful Light Binding, which stuns 2 enemy heroes for 2 turns. And they're the highest attack heroes, and this is huge. If she gets this off, the fight is over. If she hits that on like their Night Sentinel and their like Bamboo Fighter, they've got no damage, and you've won the fight as long as your DPS can hold their weight. Like, it is so strong. I cannot emphasize how strong that stun is. One of the best stuns in the game. She's also got her shield, which will shield the 2 lowest health targets. This could stack with Astro Child's shield, although typically you won't use both of them on the same team. So, yeah. And she's got her heal. So she's got a shield, a heal, and a stun, and can go in the front line. A super good front line pick. Next, and these are only in key situations or certain situations when you can use these. And typically I would only use these on the attack because when you're defending, the enemy can plan out. They can say, oh, you have this not really tanky unit in the front line who can only sometimes act as a frontliner. Well, I'm just going to put my Night Sentinel right there and kill him in one hit. So typically you don't want to use them on defense, but on attack you can use them since you can maneuver and choose how much damage they should be taking because you can choose which heroes you want to put them in front of. And this is Green Ranger. One of them is Green Ranger. Green Ranger's pretty good because the lower her health gets, the more damage she does. Especially her ultimate, which can do tons and tons of damage, and mow down a front line and destroy a back line if she can get on it. And because she does more damage the less health she's at, if you put her in the front line on the attack and put her in front of a decent damage dealer, i.e. she won't get destroyed in one hit, then it can lower her to a decent amount of health and she can do way more damage as a result of that. Another hero I'd like to say is Mirabelle. Mirabelle's not super tanky, but she can hold her own in the front line. She's got a shield, which will shield the lowest health target on your team, I believe. Her ultimate's a good backline DPS. She's also got Astral Spirit, I believe is what the other ability is, which is a single target attack that'll do quite a bit of damage to one of the enemy team members. So, that's a good ability as well. And I'd only recommend using her on the attack because on defense she's not overly tanky. So if the opponent can plan around that and kill her in one hit, then obviously you lose that from her buffs. But if you're on attack and can control how much damage she takes, you can put her in the front and fit more DPS in the back on top of her and her support. Next, Snow Queen. Snow Queen is decently tanky, not overly tanky. She's decently tanky against, I believe, male heroes because of her Drop Dead Gorgeous ability, which will reduce fade damage from either male or female heroes. So if you want to put her in front of a male or female, depending on what the ability does. Apologies. Damage dealer. Then go right ahead. And she'll take less damage, be able to survive in the front line, and pump out some pretty excellent damage. Her backline damage is nothing to sneeze at, and can really go along with some other backline hitters. So as long as you're on the attack, you can use her. Alicia is another hero. She's a warrior. She can go in the front line, but she's not overly tanky. She is relatively tanky. Now, keep in mind, the heroes that I'm talking about are relatively tanky. They're not super squishy. They're somewhat tanky, but not tanky enough to survive when an opponent targets them specifically on the attack. That's why I'm saying you should only use them on the attack. on the defense, they can plan around it, right? So I'm just giving you relatively tanky heroes that you can use. So Alicia, it brings a decent amount of team support, especially with her ability that cleanses 2 of your teammates from any negative effects, such as stuns. She's got her line attack, which doesn't do too much damage, but is useful. And she's got her plasma ball, which hits, I believe, the enemy backline and may lower their defense. So she's a pretty solid pick if you can get her in the front line on the attack and another reason I like to say for these picks is that by putting them in the front line, you allow yourself to have another DPS in the back line and give yourself a greater chance of winning the fight. Another hero I like to say is Blood Baroness, although I'd like to have an asterisk on that and say only when she's awakened. I saw a video on Reddit where she killed a full team just herself because she was able to be invulnerable at low health and then ult twice. So she does a ridiculous amount of damage, and through her invulnerability, if you want to put her in the front, you can. But you might be able to do this on defense because of her invulnerability, but either way, only use her in the front when she is awakened. And Draconia, I am not pay to play. I have 0 soul stones of her. I have no idea how good she is in the front line. I know her damage is ridiculous. Oh man. Sorry again. I know her damage is ridiculous, but I don't know how tanky she is. So we'll have to see if you can use her in the front line. So next I'd like to move on to DPS. Remember, DPS are people you want to be, typically you want damage and you want some control. So let's start off with Narita. Narita is one of the DPS I use. Overall, she's not like an amazing unit or anything. But I use her because her backline damage is very strong. She can do a lot of damage to the enemy backline. And because of her stun. Her stun is key because it allows you to lock up a target on the enemy team, which can be a priority target if you're lucky. Oh my word, I am tired apparently. I apologize for all the yawns. Where was I? Yeah, Narita. So her damage is really strong, and she's got a good stun. If it was just her damage, I probably wouldn't use her. The stun is just enough to push her over the line of being usable. So you can use her, and that's who I use. Next up, Dragon Queen. One of the meta DPS heroes for females. Dragon Queen is extremely powerful, bringing 3 offensive abilities through her Frost Scale, her Dragon Fire, and her ultimate ability, which is key, and her ultimate ability stuns as well. So, when I'm talking about, like, Narita, and I say she does good damage to the backline, you'll notice in the video before where I said which heroes not to use, I'll be saying Grimbo, his backline damage isn't that good, it's not enough to kill heroes in one turn. While that is true for Narita, Narita does have the stun to push her over the line, but you don't just say, okay, I'm going to use Narita, and then I'm going to use, like, Perona and another frontline hitter. You cannot just use Narita. If you want to be successful, you need someone like Dragon Queen, who I just mentioned, who can finish off the targets that Narita gets to low health. Or you can have another hero that hits the backline, like Dragon Queen, or Blood Baroness, Draconia, Snow Queen, Nightblade, whoever, that Narita can follow up on. You want synergy in your DPS. So, right, I'm going to talk about that more later. But right, back to Dragon Queen. She's got a whole ton of damage, a lot of offensive, guaranteed offensive abilities, because there's one that goes every turn, no matter what happens. And then her ultimate, which is a lot of damage and stuns. A very good ultimate. Next, Pyrona. Pyrona is useful because her front line, her ultimate fireball is very, very powerful, especially against heroes with not super high magical defense. Light Envoy is an example of a hero you don't want to use Pyrona against because Light Envoy's magical defense is very, very high. But against someone like Elder Dwarf, Nether Knight, you want to use her because their magic defense is low. And she's also very useful because she sheeps. I don't remember what it's called. I don't remember what it's called. But she sheeps them. I'll just say she sheeps. She sheeps an enemy frontline target. And this can be extremely useful. Whether that is a Nether Knight that you're preventing from getting their shield, allowing her to bring them down in one fireball. Or Whether that is a very key front damage dealer they decided to put in the front line, like Headless Horseman or Bamboo Fighter. If she sheeps them and then fireballs them, they're typically dead because of her very high fireball damage, and because those damage dealers that they put in the front line are not very tanky, she'll be able to kill them in about one hit, making her a very, very useful pick, especially for free-to-play players who don't have as much of a wide variety of heroes. I have her in my main team as well. Narita, Dragon Queen, Pyro are in my main team. Next is Nightblade. Nightblade is a very strong pick, mainly because of her bleeds. She has awesome synergy between her abilities. She has Razor Blade, which puts bleeds on opponents in a line, and the bleeds does tons of damage. The bleeds do incredible damage, which is why she's useful as a DPS. And her ultimate also puts bleeds on the opponent, and does more damage if the opponent's already bleeding, which is obviously extremely good with her Razor Blade ability. My apologies again. So, she is an excellent line damage dealer, and if you don't have too much variety in your female damage dealers, I would definitely recommend picking up Nightblade. I use her quite a bit. Not in my main arena team, but she could definitely go in my main arena team. That's just typically because of emblems, I guess. I could use her. She's just not as high BR as my other heroes that I'm currently using on my arena team. Yeah, that's the reason. Not as high BR. Mirabelle, a good DPS. She's not top of the line DPS. She does have good damage with her backline ultimate and with her Astral Spirit, which is a single target high damage attack on an enemy with either high attack or low health, one of the two. So she's pretty useful, and she's got the extra support from her shield. So she is quite a useful pick that you can bring in. She's an example of another hero that does multiple things. It's not just damage, it's damage and control, and within her case it's damage and shield. Damage and extra team support. Next, Green Ranger. Green Ranger was one of the worst heroes and has come to be one of the best DPS heroes. Through her awakening especially, she's got insane damage, and when she's at low health, she really, really shines. She can destroy frontline tanks, assuming she has good hit, and, well, assuming she doesn't get unlucky and they dodge. But she can do ridiculous amounts of damage, and I would recommend putting her on your team if you don't have a wide variety of damage dealers, or she's one of your... or if you don't have a wide variety of damage dealers, or you're looking for another damage dealer for your team. Next, Alicia, already went over her. She's good because she has decent damage. She's got the Plasma Ball, which hits, I believe, the enemy backline or the full team. And she's got her very useful 2-ally cleanse, which can be useful for cleansing CC or negative effects such as Blaze, such as Poison, such as Bleed. So she brings team support and damage. Next, Draconia. Nothing to say about Draconia. She's OP. Ridiculous amounts of damage. If you have her, use her. That's all that's said. Blood Baroness, as I said before, the Reddit video where she killed a whole team on her own. If you have her, if she's awakened, use her. She's very, very strong in that awakened form, being invulnerable and being able to do a lot of damage, especially if you put some good assault crests on her. And next, Arya Lock-On. I don't have much, I can't say too much about Arya Lock-On because she's only 3 stars and don't really use her. She can be very useful if you can get her to hit a lot in a position where she can hit a lot of heroes with her ultimate. She's very useful. And her snipe, or whichever it was, her snipe can also be very useful at finishing off a low health target. If she is high BR, if you have her at high BR, or if she's like high starred and you can get her up, I would recommend using her if you don't have any better heroes. Okay, I was confused for a second. I forgot I hit the like on Facebook thing. Yeah, just X that out, please. And I'll get the quest anyway. So, anyways. I don't know exactly how well she performs. I believe she's a pretty good damage dealer, so you can use her if you have her. If she's leveled up well, then go ahead and use her. Next, I'd like to talk about support a little. First thing I'd like to say is that there's really only one support that I would definitely suggest using. Well, okay, not that I definitely suggest, but that I could suggest you use, and this is Lunar Priestess. The only reason I would suggest using a full support is because, or a full support at all, is because Lunar Priestess is very powerful through her heals. She's not like Djinni, where she just does a decent amount of healing. The thing about Lunar Priestess that makes her a tier above Djinni is that her heals come in waves, which means, every single heal can take has a chance to be a critical heal, meaning that it will do extra healing. So Djinni, when she casts her heal, she's got one chance to do this extra healing, right? And if it doesn't critical heal, it doesn't critical heal. The thing about Lunar Priestess is that her heal comes in waves. It's like heal, 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 moderate amounts. But what this means is that she's got a way higher chance to get a critical heal, because every single little heal that she pumps out has a chance to be a critical heal, meaning that she can actually heal your team ridiculously. Now, overall, I would not suggest using a full support. And, okay. And my reason for that is because when you use a full support, you sacrifice a lot in terms of your team. And it can be a little bit too much. When you have a full tank, you're missing out on a lot of potential. Okay, I already said that. I apologize. I got distracted for a second. But my key point is that you're missing out on way too much DPS. Like, you could fit another DPS like Nightblade, Pyrona, someone who can be very useful to your team in that slot. That's better useful than putting a full support, because the support is only useful in some situations. For example, when the enemy has someone that can bring down your team in one hit, your support's useless because they can't shield an ally that's already dead after one turn. So your support is not useful in that situation. Whereas the DPS is always going to be useful because they're thinking DPS. Of course they're going to be useful. So, okay, hopefully I win this. I might take the L on this one. Ooh, Dragon Queen, last one alive. Let's see this. So, yeah, you have Djinni, which can be used, I guess, if you don't have too many heroes, you can use Djinni. And then Holy Keeper. What I like to be about Holy Keeper is she's actually really powerful. The only problem with Holy Keeper is that it takes way too long for her to be useful. It takes her 3 turns to resurrect an ally, and in a meta where most heroes are dead within 1 to 2 turns, it just takes her too long to cast that ability, and she's not as useful as she could be. So yeah, that's what I'd say for support. Lunar Priestess is really the only one that I'd say you should use if you're going to use a support. But overall, I would not recommend using a support just because the amount of DPS you could be sacrificing for that support, which is not useful. In all situations, it can be quite a lot. So that's all the heroes. So now, building your team out of these heroes. Obviously, you cannot just throw 5 random heroes that I said are good together and expect to come out on top. I'm probably going to lose because of that Blood Baroness. And expect to come out on top. So, your objective is synergy. You don't want to overcompensate on any one thing, and you don't want to undercompensate on any one thing. So if you see that your team already has a crap ton of control, then you don't need to stack on heroes that have specialty in control. If you already have a lot of support on your team, you don't need to stack another super supportive person on your team like Djinni or Lunar Priestess. But the biggest thing when it comes to synergy that I want to mention is between the DPS. You heard me earlier when I was talking about Narida. I was saying, oh man, not again. When I was talking about Narida, I was saying you can't just use Narida because her ability is a backline ultimate, meaning she cannot kill all the heroes in one hit and will just feed rage. And this is typically a bad thing, and is a characteristic of a lot of heroes that I put on the do not use list. The way to get around this is using other heroes that complement her, other heroes that will hit the back line in her stead and allow her damage to be useful. You can't just use her and expect to win. What you need is her to soften up the enemy backline and then have a few extra backline heroes which can follow up. And I just lost my train of thought. So if you have, I apologize, I'm just getting super distracted. So if you have Narita that can soften up the enemy backline, you need another hero that can finish off the backline for you. You can't just have Lunar Priestess. So this is someone where I have, for example, Dragon Queen. Dragon Queen is the hero for me that will follow up on Narita's damage. And Narita weakens them, Dragon Queen kills them. Or Dragon Queen weakens and Narita kills them. You can't just have one hero doing backline damage. Because then the rest... because then you're just going to end up feeding rage. And you're just going to end up feeding rage, and the DPS ends up getting wasted because there's no one to finish them off. So the biggest thing in regards to synergy, I'm losing a lot here. The biggest thing in regards to synergy is making sure that you have follow-up, that you have multiple heroes that can hit the same targets. You don't want a Pyrona that can hit the front line and a Narita that can hit the back line when you have... you don't want a Pyrona that can hit the front line and a Narita that can hit the back line when you have no one that can hit both and follow up on each person's damage. You want other people that can follow up on that damage. Another thing I can say with synergy is when you have fragile DPS, you have some support on your team to back them. And this is like, you've got that backline Dragon Queen who needs some help to survive, especially if she gets locked up. This is where your Astral Child comes in, where your Lumia comes in, where your Lunar Priestess or your support comes in, which allows them to stay alive. So, like I said before, you don't want to go overboard on your support. You don't want to have way too much support, but you also don't want to have too little support. So, when it comes to synergy, the main point is you want multiple heroes that can hit multiple targets, and you want some support for your fragile DPS. Drowned on for quite a while there. But yeah, apologize for that. So, yeah, I think that's about all I want to say. This is probably going to be quite a long video. I thank you all for watching. I hope the video wasn't too long. I hope some of my points made sense. I hope that I didn't get distracted too many times and make crap out of this video. I guess we'll have to see what you guys think. So, yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say. I'm hoping to put out another video soon. I don't know if I'm going to make if I'm going to make an update video, just because the update doesn't seem to have any huge new content. The update seems to be a lot of like new item, new stage here. You've got new max level, new rune level, new awakening. There's nothing that to really write home about and make a video over. So I probably won't be doing a video on the update. I might, if you guys want, and you can tell me what you think about that in the comments below. If you found this useful, that was the objective. So, I'm hoping to come out with a part 3 as probably my next video if I don't make one on the update. So yeah, I thank you all for watching, for spending a little part of your day with me. I'm sorry if this video wasn't as useful as it could have been for you. Apologize for that. But I still hope it did help some of you. If you'd like to discuss some of my points in the comments below, if you'd like to talk about maybe heroes that I missed, feel free to do that as well, and I can have a discussion with you in the comments. Thank you all for watching. Cheers, guys, and have a good night. This is Elivaras, signing out.